Grab a cup of tea and join me at my table as I share my feast of a TBR for the May Flowers Readathon and Read Along. These are books that I have gathered to read for the month of May. Some of them I have fully committed to reading, but others of them I've just included in this stack because they have flowers on the cover and they are so perfectly suited for the May Flowers Readathon. As a reminder, the May Flowers Readathon is simply reading a book with flowers on the cover in the month of May. This year, we've added in a read-along component, and I couldn't be more excited. So to start out with our feast, I have our choice for the May Flowers Read-Along. This was what you guys chose by overwhelming popularity, and that is The Forgotten Garden by Kate Morton. This is a multi-generational novel. We start in 1913 with Nell, who is shipped off to Australia. Then we come back to England in Cornwall to Blackhurst in 1975. And then we are in 2005 when Cassandra, who is Nell's granddaughter, she kind of picks up the mystery thread from there. So we've got multiple POVs and multiple timelines. While this is very thick, I have it on good authority that it is a pretty fast read, so we should be fine for reading it in a month. It's very accessible on ebook, audio. My library has multiple copies. So as a reminder, I will be doing live streams throughout the month, one on the 15th of May at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to discuss the first half of the book. And then we're doing another live stream at the end of May on the 29th, also at 7 p.m. to discuss the second half of the book and any other thoughts that we've had throughout the whole book. So that is The Forgotten Garden for our May Flowers read-along. Next, I did add an alternative option for people who want to have a little bit more of a community reading experience, but they're busy, don't have time, don't really want to take on such a big book. And so I chose the second place book choice from our poll, which was The Bookshop Ladies by Faith Hogan. We have in this, I believe, at least two ladies. We have Joy and Robin, and it is set in Ballycove, which I believe other books of Faith Hogan's are also set in Ballycove, but this is not like part of a series or anything. I don't think there's any spoilers for any of her other books. And in this, Joy's husband, Eve, passes away. There's a pretty traumatic event that happens right at the beginning where they have a car accident, and as he's being rushed to the hospital, he tells her that he has a long-lost daughter that he has not told her about. And so after his death, she decides to find his daughter, and she is, of course, in Ballycove. So this, I think, is just your quintessential women's lit, and I'm excited to read it. I just think this cover is stunning. So that is Bookshop Ladies. And then for the Cozy Reader Book Club, we have The Harvester by Jean Stratton Porter. This is a reread for me. This is a book that I love so very much. I think I chose it as one of my top favorite books for the year that I read it the first time. In this, we have a young man. He is living out in the wilds in Indiana. Jean Stratton Porter is very well known for her writing of that Midwest area, and very well known as almost like a naturalist writer. She's just writes so beautifully about nature and specifically that geographic region. But this young man is living out there in the wilds, and he is building a house. And one evening, he has a vision of a woman, and from that point forward, his entire existence is really focused around finding out who this woman is. Something that I love so much is why this is called The Harvester. I just think Jean Stratton Porter did such a beautiful job in her creativity of making him a harvester and what that actually looks like, both physically as well as kind of philosophically. So there is humor in this. We've got characters who can make you laugh out loud. There is seriousness. There's obviously a bit of mystery surrounding this woman. And I also really love the character of David. It's just one of my favorite books, and I'm so excited to read this with the Cozy Reader Book Club and hope that it stands up and meets their expectations. Another community reading experience that I am joining in is with a couple friends of mine, and that is the new Magdalene by Wilkie Collins. There is a group of us on here. I believe Elizabeth Brink kind of gathered us together and said, hey, would you want to read the new Magdalene by Wilkie Collins? I mentioned last autumn that there's a group of women that we've been kind of reading Wilkie Collins through, and this is just the next installment in that. I am so excited to read this. So in this, we have Mercy Merrick. She has a troubled past. She is, when we open up in the book, is a nurse, and she comes across someone who is in need of her help. And through certain situations, Mercy, I believe, makes an impulsive decision to take over someone's identity. And I love that trope so very much. I love Wilkie Collins. I trust him. And I also did want to have a moment for this Persephone copy. I know they have a very distinct cover that they have kind of moved to over the last few years of having just this gray cover with the white block. I also love their attention to detail. They've included this bookmark with this book, and this is a copy of a silk that was created by an architect in 1871, and this book was written in 1873. And so they have included a bookmark. Persephone also had that be the end pages as well. It comes with a preface with information. I briefly read it, and it was talking about kind of the weather and the setting for when this book was written. So it is quite thick, but I am excited to dive into another Wilkie Collins and excited to do that in May. And then last, but certainly not least, is another community reading experience I'm doing, and that is Coming Home by Rosamund Pilcher. This was organized by Jen at Jen's Reading Life, and I'm so excited and just feel so honored that she included me as this experience, and I'm joining her in a live on May 1st to discuss the first half of the book, and then we will be getting together on May 30th to discuss with all of you live the second half of the book. So we're really excited about this. I just love so much having these community reading experiences. It just helps to solidify books in my memory and experiences and just make them that much more beloved, not just because of the plot and the story, but also because of everyone who's joining in and sharing their thoughts and experiences. Next, I want to share some more options for kind of this feast idea for what I'm going to read in May. So from this point forward, these are books that I am going to just leave out, strewn about, for sort of a mood reading idea. So while these are books that I am including in my TBR, and they are books that I want to read, chances are I'm not going to be able to get to all of these, but I do want to kind of have them out and about so that if I'm in the mood to read one or a few of them, I can just pick them up and read them. So this stack, these are all books that I have committed that I absolutely will get to. The rest of these are just kind of mood reading options. So at the top of that list is The Garden House by Marcia Willett. This was one of the options for the May Flowers Read-Along, and it certainly is one that I do want to read, even if we don't read it in a community manner. And so that is the story of Elle. Her father, Martin, has passed away. He has left his cottage to her, so she has inherited that. So when she goes to live in her father's cottage, she starts to unravel some secrets that he has. It seems like he was in a relationship. There is a woman in the town who I think was in love with her father, and Elle didn't know about it. And so this is an exploration of grief, but I really am most excited about the cottage and the village and the descriptions that Marcia Willett will bring us into. It is a pretty thin book, so I really do feel like this is one that I could pack along with me to go to a botanical garden and be able to get through in not too much of time. Yeah, it's a little bit over 200 pages. So certainly is a strong contender for what I will be picking up to get through in May. And then next, I have Lost Lake by Sarah Addison Allen. This was also one of the choices for the May Flowers read-along, and it is one that I want to read. So many people said that they had read it already, but that they would be totally willing to reread it, which I think is the sign of a good book, when everyone is just willing to, hey, if that's the one chosen, I'd be glad to reread it again. So in this, we have a young widow who is grieving the loss of her husband, and she decides to take her daughter back to her childhood vacation spot that her aunt owns. Unfortunately, upon arrival, it's been a long time since Kate has been there, but she really is looking for that safety. And unfortunately, when she gets there, she discovers that her aunt is considering selling these cottages around the lake that's this vacation spot to a real estate developer. And I don't think the town is really happy about that. And I think Kate starts to get involved in that. I do know Sarah Addison Allen does have a lot of whimsy and magical realism in her stories, and I also know that she does not shy away from heavy topics, so I would fully expect a marrying of those two themes in this story as well. Next, I am hoping to get to Mary Stewart's Rose Cottage. This also is very thin, and so again, one that I think I could probably take with me to a botanical gardens and just sit and read through for a couple hours. This is about 230 pages. I love Mary Stewart. I'm just going to read the flap because I think that is a more engaging and potentially entrapping description. Rose Cottage, a tiny thatched dwelling in an idyllic English country setting, would appear the picture of tranquility to any passerby. But when Kate Herrick returns to her childhood home, she uncovers a web of intrigue as tangled as the rambling roses in its garden. It is the summer of 1947. Kate, widowed in the war and comfortably settled in London, travels to Rose Cottage to receive some family papers for her grandmother. Curious as to the changes and the welcome she'll find, she's relieved when at first glance everything seems as she remembers it. But soon she finds disturbing evidence of a break-in. The papers are missing. The village is alive with gossip. Did her elderly neighbors, suspected of being witches, really see nighttime prowlers and ghosts in the cottage garden? So great. Love Mary Stewart. And I also really love this cover. So I am also really wanting to get to this. That's probably going to be the theme in everything that I'm sharing. Okay, so next, I just recently found these for my indie bookstore experience, and I wanted to continue the next book in the series. I know Jen at Jen's Reading Life did a Mrs. Polifax video a couple weeks ago, so I just was encouraged of okay, you just found these books, let's continue the series. So the next for me is the third book, and that is The Elusive Mrs. Polifax. There is a tiny little flower on the cover, so it totally fits with the readathon theme. And if you haven't started on Mrs. Polifax, I did pull out my paperback version of the first book, and it has a flower on the cover. The other covers that I've looked at also have flowers, so I think you'd be safe in choosing The Unexpected Mrs. Polifax as a choice. Mrs. Polifax is a retired widow woman who's just living on her own. She's got 2 kids, but they're living their own lives, and she has always had this dream of being a CIA spy. And in the first book, she stumbles upon an opportunity that kind of puts her right in that. And she does such a fantastic job that they continue to call her. So for this one, she is called, I believe, to go to Bulgaria for a courier service. And she ends up befriending students who are there, and she ends up saving everyone. I think that's kind of the theme for her. So if you have already read the first 2 and you want to join me in reading The Elusive Mrs. Polifax, then jump right in. I also have just put a poem for Mrs. Polifax that also has flowers. So who knows if I'll get to both of these, but I do want to have them in the stack because I do find that when you read Mrs. Polifax, when you're done, you're kind of oh, kind of want more Mrs. Polifax. So I thought I would just put both of these books on the stack and we'll see where we land. Next, this is very much wishful thinking, but I don't want to lose this as a book that I want to read. And because we've got this beautiful bowl of flowers and then the flowers that are just kind of on the side of this chair, I wanted to mention Christopher and Columbus by Elizabeth von Arnim. A few years ago, I shared the books that I had read so far on Elizabeth von Arnim, and I would love to add to that list. And this is the story of twins who go to the United States after the war. I think they are German and English, and so they're really not welcome in either country. And so they end up on a steamer to the United States. And in a twist of fate, they end up with a benefactor named Mr. Twist. And the description I've read calls this a comedy of errors. It sounds like they just get into all kinds of hijinks as they're traveling across the United States, eventually ending up in California. So this is quite a long book. We've got 500 pages, so who knows, but maybe I can get it started. Something that I've learned about Elizabeth von Arnim in her other works, not so much in Enchanted April, I don't think, but in some of the other works that I've read, she has a very dry sense of humor. And I really am looking forward to finding more of that in Christopher and Columbus. All right, we continue. I've got The Briar Club by Kate Quinn. I was fortunate enough to be in a Barnes & Noble that had this at a buy one, get one half off, I think, deal. And I have not ever seen it since. It is so popular. I guess they just had an overstock, but I do love the cover of this. In this, we have a 1950s boarding house in Washington, D.C. And we've got women that, as we get to know them, it really seems like they've got everything together, but of course they do not. And we've got all kinds of, I think, heartbreak and some very difficult situations that women would naturally have found themselves in during that time period. And also, I think, a murder to start off with, and a lot of intrigue and drama and secrets. So again, it's quite popular. When I last checked, it had like over 4.25 stars on Goodreads for 250,000 people. So I have a feeling that this is a pretty fast read. So it is definitely a contender as well. The next book that I have that's got flowers on the cover that I'm including in my feast is Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. You probably know what this is about. We just had a movie that came out that is very well acclaimed that I would love to watch, but I am sort of holding myself to read the book first before seeing the movie. In this, we are learning about Shakespeare's life and death of his 11-year-old son. I think this is quite the tearjerker and a bit of a painful read, but I have not read a Maggie O'Farrell, and I would love to. And again, I do want to see the movie. And so with these beautiful flowers on the cover, that is the perfect impetus to add this to my TBR. Next is also not a light read at all, and that is Tayari Jones' Kin. I also, in my indie bookstore video recently, purchased this because it is a signed edition. This also does have flowers on the cover. So as I was thinking about, okay, where am I going to put this as far as like storing my TBRs? Because I do keep my books I haven't read, for the most part, not put on my shelves. I keep them in a separate place so that I can keep track of what I do need to read physically. I was like, well, this has flowers on the cover. This would be a perfect book to add to my May Flowers Readathon stack. This is not a light read. We have two women, Vernice and Annie. We are in Honeysuckle, Louisiana, in Jim Crow South in the 1950s. So, of course, we have this very strong theme of resilience and their experiences as women in the South. So I am really looking forward to this. I think it's going to be one of those books that feels like a very powerful and important read. Sometimes when you label a book with that, it's very difficult to stand up to that. But people that I trust as far as their reading opinions have loved this book. And so I'm really happy to be able to add it to my list, and am hoping that if I can't finish it in the month, I at least get it started. And then last, I have a book that continues to be on my TBR. So I'm really hoping that I get to it. And that is The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. The other book of hers that I've read I enjoyed, which was The Amalfi Curse. So this is the story of an apothecary. I think it is a dual timeline where we've got Nella, who is in the 18th century, and she's the apothecary. She is supporting women who are in, I believe, abusive relationships, and she is helping them with poisons, I think. And then we have Carolyn in modern times as well. It's not the thickest book out there. Let's see how many pages it is. Well, it's almost 300 pages, but it is one that I have had on my list for so long, but I am hoping to get to it. All right, so those are the, I believe, 15 books that I have gathered together for the May Flowers Readathon, as well as the read-along. So let me know, are you joining in just the readathon part? You've just found a book that has flowers on the cover and you're going to join in that way. Or let me know if you are joining in the reading of The Forgotten Garden, or maybe also the Bookshop Ladies. I started this years ago thinking that I wanted to have something that was really simple for people. You know, sometimes with readathons, we've got prompts, and that is so fun. It really makes it interactive. But I know for me, I'm oftentimes trying to just find something that's simple, but also a way to feel connected. And my hope for this readathon experience is that you experience that you are feeling connected, but also not feeling like there's a lot of, hoops to jump through, that was just this simple connection. And really the reminder that it's about celebrating the season that we're in. We're in May, we're in a time when flowers are blooming. Even if you're on, the other side of the world and you're moving into fall, there are still fall flowers that you can find and have be part of this readathon. So let me know in what ways you are joining, and I hope to see you at my lives that I have for The Forgotten Garden, and then also for the lives with Coming Home with Jen. So as always, thanks so much for watching. And until next time.